Hi, so in our last lesson, we talked about what scientific notation was and how to convert between scientific notation and standard form. In this lesson, we're going to talk about computing with scientific notation. So we will be multiplying, dividing, adding, and subtracting. So for multiplication and division with scientific notation, you can apply the product of powers and quotient of powers properties to multiply and divide numbers written in scientific notation. So what this means, if we look at our first example, we have 4.62 times 10 to the 5th times 8.5 times 10 to the 9th. So we know from previous lessons that when we have a base with the same exponent and we multiply, we would add their exponents. So 10 to the 5th times 10 to the 9th gives us 10 to the 14th. Then we want to take our factors, so 4.62 and 8.15, and we want to actually multiply those. So if we did 4.62 times 8.15, we would get 37.653 times 10 to the 14th. However, we know that our decimal place must be after our first non-digit, or first non-zero digit. So we need to move it from after the 7 to after the 3. And since we're talking about a large number, the 3.763 times 10, again, large number, so if we moved it once, we need to raise this by 1, so times 10 to the 15th. So 3.7653 times 10 to the 15th. Okay, same thing with our division. If I have 4.62 times 10 to the 5th divided by 1.4 times 10 to the negative 9, I'm going to divide my factors. So 4.62 divided by 1.4 leaves me with 3.3 rather, as my factor, times 10 to the, we need to figure out the power. So we have 10 to the 5th over 10 to the negative 9. So we subtracted when we divide. So 5 minus a negative 9, same thing as 5 plus 9, leaves us with an exponent of 14. Now we double check. Yes, our decimal is in the correct space. So our answer is 3.3 times 10 to the 14th. So we didn't need to modify that answer at all. The decimal was already in the right place. Okay, so you can do it by hand like that, or you could use your calculator. So using the calculator, we have 6.4 times 10 to the negative 5 times 12,000. So if we pop on over to our calculator, so follow along in your notes with what's written here as I type it in this calculator. So we have in parentheses, and make sure you keep those parentheses, 6.4 times 10, use our caret key again for an exponent, to the negative 5th, make sure you use the negative, not the minus, close parentheses, times, so I could just use parentheses again, 12,000. The important part of using the calculator is that what you type in the calculator is exactly what was on the paper. And enter. We would see we get 0.768, which is not in scientific notation, and we want it to be in scientific notation. So a little trick on the calculator, we can hit mode, and then you'll see the second line down here is currently flashing on normal. So we want to arrow over to the SCI, which stands for scientific notation. Select that by hitting enter. Then to get back to your main screen, second mode quits it. So now that we're in scientific notation, if we hit enter, that gives us our answer in scientific notation. So 7.68 E negative 1. Now this E part, you do not ever want to write that on your paper. It is not E. That E stands for the times 10 part. So 7.68 E negative 1 really means 7.68 times 10 to the negative 1. So using the calculator, we got 7.68 times 10 to the negative 1. So if you just want to make a side note for your calculator, E means 10 times. That's our scientific notation on the calculator. So for our second example, 2.5627 times 10 to the negative 9 divided by 5.23 times 10 to the negative 3. So again, we're going to use our calculators. So we want to put a fraction in first. So alpha y equals, get our fraction in there. So we have 2.5627 times 10 raised to the power of negative 9 over 5.23 times 10 to the negative third. And if we hit enter, now you'll see this one's already in scientific notation because we had already changed the mode. In order to go back to standard form, you would have to go back to the mode. We will practice going back and forth in class. So 4.9 times 10 to the negative 7. Again, that E stands for a times 10. So 4.9 times 10 to the negative 7. So you'll see, if you want to highlight a little up here, for your calculator, your mode should be in scientific notation when we're working with scientific notation. Okay, so scientists estimate that there are over 3.5 times 10 to the 6 ants per acre in the Amazon rainforest. If the Amazon rainforest covers approximately 1 billion acres, find the total number of ants. Write your answer in scientific notation. So 3.5 times 10 to the 6 per acre. There are approximately 1 billion acres. So if it's per, you know that means multiply. So 3.5 times 10 to the 6 times 1 billion. So 1,000 million and billion. Now that's a lot of zeros to think about. So I'm going to rewrite this as 3.5 times 10 to the 6 times 1 times 10 to the billion. If our zero is here, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to get our decimal there. So times 10 to the 9. So we can either do this by hand or using our calculator. This one's actually really easy to do by hand because you're taking 3.5 times 1, which is 3.5, times 10 to the, we're multiplying, so we're going to add our exponents. So 6 plus 9 gives us 10 to the 15th. So there are about 3.5 times 10 to the 15th ants in the Amazon rainforest. Okay, there's some practice with multiplying and dividing with scientific notation. So last up would be adding and subtracting. When adding or subtracting decimals in standard form, you line up the place values. When adding or subtracting in scientific notation, the place value is represented by the exponent. Each exponent must have the same value in order to add or subtract. So we want to evaluate each expression and express the result in scientific notation. So our first example, we have 5.45 times 10 to the third plus 3.12 times 10 to the fourth. Now, if you did not have a calculator that had scientific notation, you would need to convert them each to standard form, add them like normal, and then convert them back to scientific notation. However, we do have the calculators in school, so when you're in school, go ahead and use them. So if we pop over to our calculator, again, remember, anywhere you see a parenthesis, you must put a parenthesis. So exactly as it's written on the paper goes into the calculator. So in parentheses, 5.45 times 10 to the third. Make sure you arrow over before you close parentheses. plus, inside parentheses, 3.12 times 10 to the 4th. Again, arrow over, close parentheses, hit enter. We get 3.665 times 10 to the 4th. We wanted to express our result in scientific notation. The calculator is still in scientific notation because I did not change the mode yet. So our answer is 3.665 times 10 to the 4th. Okay, so subtraction will be the same way. 2.78 times 10 to the 5th minus 46,500. Again, if you did not have a calculator that worked with scientific notation, you would need to convert this first piece first and then subtract just like normal. But showing you on the calculators, in parentheses we have 2.78 times 10 to the 5th power minus 46,500. Double checking that exactly what's on the paper is in the calculator. And that gives us 2.35 times 10 to the 5th, leaving it in scientific notation. So 2.315 times 10 to the 5th. Okay, so now a couple for you to try. One multiplication, one division. If you have a scientific calculator, you can absolutely use it. If you don't, you do still need to work these out. So work them out by hand. I showed you how to. And once you are done with them, you are done with this lesson.